right, we are going to get started. Today is COVID-19 update and how we can actually combat diabetes at home. I did say we were going to start talking about kidney disease, but I got several comments that people wanted to know the exact steps that they needed to take at home to actually combat diabetes. So I have included these exact steps in this presentation, and then on Thursday we will start with kidney disease. All right, my name is Dr. Valda Crowder, also known as Dr. V. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram on the handles there below. This is every Tuesday and Thursday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And my website is AskDrV.us, and that's where all the source documentation is for the talk and the literature. I've been an emergency medicine physician now for 30 years and going into my 31st year starting in July. So looking forward to it. All right, let's get started. The structure is a slide presentation followed by Q&A. All in total, we ended about 9 o'clock. You can type in questions at any point in time during this presentation. You can put them in the Q&A, you can put them in the chat icon, it really doesn't matter, either one is fine. If after this presentation you come up with stuff, you can go to AskDrV.us and you can send me an email. It's something you want to find out about or a question you forgot to ask, or could you talk about this, could you talk about that? Any of those things can be, you can send me an email and I will respond. All right, so the intention is to keep participants informed about COVID-19 science that will help you and your family stay healthy during this pandemic. The outcome is that you'll be motivated to create or improve an action plan for yourself or your family. Or you may be motivated to create an action plan for a broader community like a homeowners association or a church, maybe a school or a job environment, etc. All right, right now, unvaccinated folks in the United States are the ones that are actually driving the coronavirus surges that we are seeing in various communities. Again, I think that what happens is as we begin to open up, people see other folks doing things and they don't realize that the difference between me doing it and you doing it is that you're not vaccinated. And they begin to do things that the vaccinated people are doing, and not realizing that, the fact that, those folks got a vaccination makes a very, very big difference. Globally, there have been 149 million cases. We are now up over 3 million deaths globally. In the United States, we had 32 million cases, and we are at 586,000 dead. Although we are actually getting folks vaccinated worldwide, the coronavirus is actually increasing. We saw the most ever cases in a single week, the week of April 20th. So even though, a lot of the industrialized countries are getting vaccinated, the overall worldwide things are actually escalating, not decreasing. I thought this was interesting. This actually came out yesterday. Boris Johnson said he would rather let the bodies pile high in the air by the thousands rather than allow for a third lockdown. So this just shows the pressures of politicians to put our lives at risk rather than actually do the right thing when needed for the health and wellness of the community. All right, so we've talked about don't let your guard down, still mask up, wash your hands, stay 6 feet apart. Now, as we talked also, Black women and Black men, Black women are 3 times more likely to die from COVID-19. Black men are even higher than that. As we've said before here, it's highly contagious, only 45 seconds of exposure. The mutations minimum time of exposure is even lower. So, and the percent penetration, which is how many people actually get the disease, is 60 to 80%. It can be 80 to 90% with the mutations and the variations, which we'll talk about. Just a little bit about how it gets into your body. The virus is inside that fatty coating. The fatty coating is on the outside. The spike proteins are on the outside. Also part of the coating, that spike protein actually connects with the receptor. It unlocks the cell and lets the virus into your cell. Once it gets in the cell, it replicates. You have 1,000,000,000,000 cells in your body. So it can replicate many, many, many times. So while it's replicating, it then has many, many opportunities to make a mistake that actually makes it more potent and more virulent and more dangerous of a virus. So that's why it's really, really important that we clamp down on infections everywhere, because all of this spreading of the infection leads to copies of this protein that are actually stronger. It reassembles and it heads back out. Dr. Fauci says the best decision he ever made as NIAID director is to actually invest in the development of the vaccines. So now that we know a little bit about how the virus works, let's talk about the vaccines. The messenger RNA approach is what's used by Pfizer and Moderna. You actually get messenger RNA that tells your body to produce the spike protein. Your body recognizes it as foreign, develops antibodies, attacks it, and kills it. Now, when you get the second shot, your body also recognizes it. And that is why people get a little bit of a headache, a fever, may not feel that well, because the second dose, your body has already made the spike protein and may have already recognized it as foreign. So this way, when you actually really get COVID-19 in the community, you actually don't get sick. So what's important about this is it is not stopping you from getting it, it's actually stopping you from getting symptomatic from it, which is very, very different than how a lot of vaccines work. Johnson & Johnson is a viral vector approach that takes the common cold virus, alters it to become harmless, connects it with genetic material, and then it actually also teaches your body to attack the spike protein so that COVID-19 is harmless. So we had Pfizer and Moderna, which is 94 and 95% effective. They're both 2 shots. They're 21 and 28 days apart. Side effects are flu-like symptoms, chills, fatigue, headache. When the vaccine is actually working and your body recognizes that spike protein. Johnson & Johnson was put on pause, and that has actually been reopened up just recently. That is the 1 shot, basic refrigeration, so it can go a lot of different places. The 72, 66, and 57 is just the efficacy in different countries. So it was US, UK, and I think South Africa. So the FDA ended its recommended pause, and it has cleared the way for all states to use Johnson & Johnson again. As I said, what they mainly did was train the physicians on how to actually recognize some of the side effects, that those side effects have to be treated differently. They also changed the package insert. Now let's talk about variants. These are the variants that we know of so far, and I'm sure there are a lot more. But these are kind of the basic ones. The UK variant has become predominant in the United States. It is now in all 50 states. There's a Japan, Brazil, and 2 California variants. And again, you're seeing these variants in areas that have had out of control infection, right? And so when you see moderate impact, moderate reduction of neutralization by convalescence and post-vaccination sera, that just tells you that there is some reduction in the effectiveness of both antibodies and also vaccines. Now, researchers in India, because India has also been out of control, are now investigating COVID-19 with multiple mutations. So they're calling them double variant mutations and triple variant mutations, which means they have variants or mutations in multiple areas. So they have mutations in 2 or 3 areas of the spike protein. So as soon as you start getting variants with mutations in multiple areas, it's more and more likely that the rest of the population is going to need a booster, or the vaccine may not work quite as well. What is happening in India is really catastrophic. They are at a point now where they're diagnosing roughly about 300,000 new cases a day. So it is really, really catastrophic what is happening in India. They have also had shortages of oxygen. And they have had people scrambling to purchase oxygen, families having to run around and try to get a tank of oxygen for their family members, and they run around for hours and might get a tank that lasts 30 minutes. So it is really, really unfortunate. Some of the richest people in India are fleeing on private jets. The country is on lockdown for people coming in or leaving. Wealthy people are chartering private jets. They chartered a private jet in one case to an Asian country, only to find out that when they got there, a third of them had COVID and didn't know it. Now, the CDC just came out, I think it was between today and yesterday, that vaccinated people do not need to wear masks outdoors when they are in small groups, biking and or running. This is great. So you want to walk the boardwalk or go to the beach, or and you're vaccinated, you can do so without a mask. You can even gather at an outdoor picnic with 3 to 4 people that are also vaccinated. So this was one of the major changes that actually just came out in the last day or two. The CDC also set up a risk strata profile, which came out so close to the beginning of this webinar that I will have it on Thursday, and it actually gives you high to low and what you should do if you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, and we'll go over that on Thursday. They're studying now to see to what extent do COVID-19 vaccines stop transmission. I think that what we'll see is there'll still be some transmission, but it'll be dramatically lower. When I've seen the data from Pfizer, it has been almost 94% lower. So there's still like 6% transmission, and also there was a shorter number of days. Now, as far as people actually requiring the vaccine, a hospital in Texas was the first hospital in the country, this was Houston Methodist, to require all of its staff to become vaccinated. I believe that we will see this more and more, particularly in the hospital setting. We already in a hospital setting as healthcare workers have required vaccinations as part of being around patients and delivering patient care. So for myself, I have to get the flu vaccine every year. I have to have the hepatitis B vaccine. And so there's other vaccines that we already have to have. And I think this COVID-19 is just going to be a part of it. State universities, these are universities and colleges that will be requiring COVID-19 vaccination in order for students to enroll starting September. So this is the list. I am sure this list will grow, but this is what I have been able to accumulate so far. I'm very glad to see my alma mater, Cornell University, on the list. Also, a lot of colleges and universities in California and University of Maryland, Rutgers, Syracuse, University of Rochester. So it's just good when you see this list, and I believe it will actually grow. So by the end of the summertime, teenagers are that plan to go to college are going to have to get vaccinated. And these are the schools so far that are requiring it. West Virginia said, hey, if you get vaccinated between 16 and 35 years old, we will give you a $100 savings bond. And again, I think this is actually really smart, because at the end of the day, those patients between 16 and 35 years old who get COVID-19 are going to cost the state much more than $100 in medical care, disability care, et cetera. So West Virginia said, we're going to give you a $100 savings bond if you get vaccinated between 16 and 35 years old. So those are some of the incentives that they're putting out. So when are you fully vaccinated? 2 weeks after your last shot. So whichever vaccine you take, 14 days after the last shot, that is when you are fully vaccinated. Now, this is actually going to change. So I will have slides on what you can do when you are fully vaccinated. We did not get to change this slide out, but based upon the recommendation, you can now go outdoors without a mask, and you can actually be indoors with other vaccinated people in small numbers. It is still important when you are indoors to wear your mask. as much as possible, and to still stay 6 feet apart when you are indoors with other folks. Amazingly, we have given 232 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. So that is really, I have to say that, that is really, really from the beginning of the year, a record pace. Now, that is not the number of people that are fully vaccinated, because some of those have gotten part one of a 2-part series, but we have at least over 100 million people that are fully vaccinated in the United States. Scientists who helped develop the COVID-19 vaccine have agreed that there is going to need to be a 3rd shot or a booster shot as immunity wanes. Again, this is why it is so important for us to make sure that we help India and Brazil and the Philippines and other countries that are seeing a lot of infection. The quicker we get this under control, the better. I have heard of 1 or 2 patients actually being scheduled already for their booster shot. So how do you talk to family members or friends that are hesitant to get vaccinated? So one is, you don't want to make them wrong for their own personal decision. You want to encourage them to talk to their doctors and remind them about qualified people who have studied the vaccine, and medical professionals stand by it and have taken it. Also, for some people, it's important for them to actually look at, do you want to get back to your life quicker? How could you be helping your family members if you get vaccinated? Sometimes there's conversations like that are important. The other thing is that I always remind people, the medicine may not taste good, but the disease is so much worse. So getting ill from COVID-19 is very, very serious, and really the vaccine reactions are minor in comparison. All right, some people wanted to laminate the vaccine cards. If you want to do that, verify the information, make sure it's correct. Keep a copy of the front and back just in case you have to add anything else to the card, and make sure that you have completed the immunization series before laminating. This is really, really important. And I did not think about this until I was actually working this past week. We really don't know who's been vaccinated, who hasn't been vaccinated, and who's had COVID and who hasn't had COVID. I've now started making it a regular practice to ask everyone these questions, no matter what they come into the emergency department with. So make sure to get your COVID vaccination added to your medical record. You can send a copy to your doctor. You can see, in some cases, people are associated with the Veterans Affairs, or they have a state immunization information system office. But you want to make sure that your doctor has on file your information regarding your vaccination status. And I would also say whether or not you've had COVID as well. Dr. Fauci is fully vaccinated, but he still won't eat inside of a restaurant. And of course, that's indoors, not an outdoor restaurant. And so I just remind people, I'm basically in the same camp. I will eat outdoors, or a restaurant where, they have the one side of the restaurant is almost like a gate, and it opens up and it's partially open to the air. So I am in that same category. All right, so we're going to switch over to wellness. And I'm going to talk today about specifically, so the question that I got asked after the presentation was specifically, what did I do to help my family member get off of insulin and get onto a pill? So I'm just going to go over that. So this is how to combat diabetes at home. What can you do for yourself? How can you empower yourself? So as we said, the pancreas is located in the abdomen. It has an endocrine function where it regulates blood sugar, and it has an exocrine function where it actually helps with digestion of your food. Diabetes is when your blood sugar gets too high. Your blood glucose is the main source of energy for that you get for your body. Insulin is what's made in the pancreas and helps glucose from food get into your cells to be used as energy. And that's really what insulin does. So as we said, there's type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes. Type 1 can develop at any age, but it occurs most frequently in children and adults. Type 2 usually occurs in older people or adults, and we usually call it diet-related diabetes because there's a lot that you can actually actually do related to it, related to prevent type 2 diabetes, and it's usually very much diet related. Gestational diabetes are people that actually get diabetes while they are pregnant. It is an important risk factor for later on developing type 2 diabetes. 50% of the people who have gestational diabetes will go on to develop type 2 diabetes. So you just want to realize how important that is. How do you know you have it? Unexplained weight gain, unexplained weight loss, always hungry, always thirsty, numbness in your feet. Some people have dizziness. Some people have eye damage. They can't see or read. Frequent urination. These are all some of the signs and symptoms of diabetes. Okay, so now here is what I want to actually go over, and this is the stuff that I want to talk about specifically that I did. Okay, so one of the things that is important, I said that I actually had worked with this family member and I went through their closet in their kitchens and we actually took out the foods that were bad for them. Now, that sounds easy, but this is what I actually used to know. There are two things that I use, the nutritional labels and high glycemic index. So high glycemic foods are foods that spike your insulin quickly. So what happens with diabetes is when your sugar shoots up quickly and then shoots down quickly, that is what actually stresses out your pancreas. So if your blood sugar is high and stays high for a long time, or is low or stays low for a long time, that is not as dangerous as it shooting up high and then shooting back down low quickly. So high glycemic index foods cause your body to actually, your blood glucose levels to shoot up and then shoot back down. Low glycemic index leveled food does not. Okay, so the red line shows high, the green line shows low glycemic index foods. Now, what are those? What are those foods? So I've just made a table here so that you can kind of see what it is. One of the things that I am going to do is I'm going to actually put together a little booklet so that people can look up certain foods and figure out what's high and what's low. But for right now, we're going to just deal with this slide. So low glycemic foods are on the left. Anything with a glycemic index less than 54. So this is really important because this is, if you're talking about fruits, you're talking about apples, pears, you can even, all of the meats, chicken, beef, turkey, shrimp, catfish, even if you want to have pork ribs, as long as you left the barbecue sauce off, those sorts of things. Moderate glycemic index are things like sweet potatoes, brown rice, white rice a little bit, even mac and cheese, table sugar, pineapples, taco shells, whole wheat bread. That's moderate glycemic. Those are things that you don't want to have those things every day, but if you had them once every week or two. Then high glycemic index are things that you really want to avoid. So this is white mashed potatoes, Cheerios, vanilla wafers, pretzels, rice cakes, corn flakes, any sort of instant rice, bagels, breads, etc. All right. Now, the other thing that is important when you actually look at a nutritional label, and I've provided a nutritional label here so that we could actually look at one, is actually what they call net carbs. So net carbs are the total carbs minus the dietary fiber minus the sugar alcohol. Now, a lot of times when you look at the foods, if you want to take something out of your cabinet now that you eat a lot and you want to actually take a look at it, you can take a minute and do that. I'll give you just a second. Now, a lot of times, sugar alcohol, there will be no sugar alcohol in your food. So if you don't see sugar alcohol listed, it just means it's zero. So a lot of times what you're doing is you're taking total carbs and subtracting it from dietary fiber. But I'm going to use an example here where there is sugar alcohol. So the total carbs on the nutritional label is 13. The dietary fiber is 3. The sugar alcohol is 6. So that means this is net for 4 net carbs. Now, what's important about this is per serving. So if you look up at the serving size is a half a cup. So if you eat a cup, then you actually got 8 net carbs, not 4, right? All right, so I just want you, if you have something that you eat normally and you think is healthy, I tell people there's a lot of things that we think are healthy, particularly if they're like protein bars or power bars, or sometimes we have cereals that we think are healthy. You really want to calculate your net carbs. All right, so the goal is to drive down the hemoglobin A1C level. So your hemoglobin A1C is glycated hemoglobin in the form of hemoglobin that is chemically linked to sugar. So this just shows a high hemoglobin A1C, which is the red blood cell to the right, has an unhealthy amount of glucose that's stuck to it. And then a low one, which is the one to the left, has less glucose stuck to it. So what you want your hemoglobin A1C to be, you want it to be less than 5.7, preferably less than 5.5. So I tell people all the time, if you do not know your hemoglobin A1C, whether you have diabetes or you don't have diabetes, you want to know your hemoglobin A1C. So normal is 5.7 and below. 5.7 to 6.4 means pre-diabetic, which means you're on your way to getting diabetes. And 6.5 or higher is considered to be diabetic. So if you don't know your hemoglobin A1C, make an appointment with your doctor and actually make sure to get your hemoglobin A1C. What's important about your hemoglobin A1C is it gives you what your average glucose level has been over the last 2 to 3 months. And it doesn't require you to fast or drink anything. So it's a very easy test to take. The other ones, which are the fasting glucose, oral glucose tolerance test, and random plasma glucose test, these tests all really basically give you a one shot in time look at what your blood glucose is. Whereas the hemoglobin A1C really tells you how you've been doing over the last 2 to 3 months. Now, common treatments, we know are insulin, oral medications, and usually you have a glucometer where you can actually check your glucose. Some people have a monitor, some sort of monitor on. All right, so if you think that your hemoglobin A1C is going up, or that your diabetes is getting worse, some of the signs are you sort of get lethargic and thirsty after eating snacks or meals. You feel shaky, lightheaded, or dizzy. You have a constant craving for a sweet tooth or fruit or bread. It's been 5 years or more, and your medication dosage has not been adjusted. So that is the sign that you might really want to get things checked, right? And then you have a fasting blood sugar that's over 130. Now, I say this to say that the lightheadedness and dizzy, or feeling sort of tired and lethargic after a meal, is an important indicator that you probably ate a meal that had a high glycemic index. So when you eat a meal and then afterwards you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, I can't keep my head up, that is a meal that you probably had a high glycemic index. So think about meals that make you really sleepy and tired. If you want to talk about it during the Q&A, I can actually tell you what I think is causing the glycemic index to be high. Now, obesity and insulin and diabetes are dramatically related to Alzheimer's. 80% of the people who have Alzheimer's also have type 2 diabetes. So it is really, really important, not just all the things that diabetes does to your body, but it also has an impact on the development of Alzheimer's. So I'm going to go over 14 steps to lower or eliminate your need for insulin. 1, get more sleep. This is very important. I did a talk on sleep. I started these talks talking about sleep because sleep is so, so, so important. If you are having problems sleeping, you want to use some of the things that we talked about in that conversation, whether or not it's melatonin or a weighted blanket or anything that would help you get more rested REM sleep. 2, exercise more. And when I say exercise more, again, it be, I'm just going to walk 15, 20 minutes a day, 3 or 4 blocks and come back. Something as simple like that is a very, very good way to start. Reducing your stress. Stress actually increases cortisol level and actually leads to more glucose actually going into your bloodstream. Losing a few pounds will always make a difference. Eating more soluble fiber. There's fiber products that you can actually add to water and drink in the morning. But fiber actually really helps the transit time in your GI system. So it helps things move through a little bit faster. Colorful fruits and vegetables are very, very important. I tell people you want to actually have the actual fruit and vegetable, not necessarily the store-bought juice associated with it. It's very different eating an apple than drinking some apple juice, which is really just sugar water. Now, herbs and spices that make a difference with glucose metabolism is fenugreek, turmeric, ginger, and garlic. Now, for myself, again, and I hate to always plug Trader Joe's, but I just have to, there is a turmeric and a ginger shot that's at Trader Joe's that I take one of each every single morning. Adding a pinch of cinnamon to things. Cinnamon actually helps with glucose metabolism. Green tea, also apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar, a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and I use the Bragg's apple cider vinegar, is very good for glucose metabolism and also high blood pressure. So if you have high blood pressure and diabetes, I would say take apple cider vinegar. The more organic you can get your apple cider vinegar, the better, and take a teaspoon every morning. As we talked about, cut down on the carbs, which is basically eat low glycemic foods whenever possible, right? And that's basically for 11 and 13. Avoid trans fats. Now, the other supplements that are very important for the metabolism of glucose is chromium, berberine, magnesium, and resveratrol. These are 4 supplements that if you have a problem with diabetes or you have pre-diabetes, that I would actually look at actually adding these sorts of supplements to your daily regimen. So I would say that if you actually do 20% or 30% of what we just went over, you will see a difference in your consumption of insulin or the oral hypoglycemic pills. The more you do of these things, the more you can get yourself, the more free you can get of insulin and actually medication. It is possible. A lot of people don't realize it, but it is possible to actually get yourself significantly cut down on insulin, and sometimes for some people that actually get off. So it is not a life sentence if you really do make the habit changes. All righty, we are going to go to Q&A.